So let us start discussing what is the self from the perspective of philosophy. So first one, let us define kung ano nga ba yung philosophy. So according to this definition, the study of theoretical basis of a particular branch of knowledge or experience. So yun daw si philosophy. Whereas philosophers studies different types of knowledge and they are always seeking for the truth, no? So in philosophy, it started, ayan, sabi ko na nga ba eh. So it started on 600 BCE, which marks as the birth of philosophy. Bakit? Kasi the Greeks are in search of knowledge, came up with the answer that are both cognitive and scientific in nature. So, because of the curiosity of the man, no, philosophy is created, and the Greeks were always in search for knowledge. They wanted to find the answers about their curiosities. So they use cognitive and scientific nature in order for them to come up with the answers of those knowledge that they seek. That's why philosophy is born. So Greek philosophers from Miletus, they were the ones who chose to seek natural explanation to the events and phenomena around them instead of seeking for supernatural explanations from God as what what was passed down through the generations. Kasi before philosophy is born, no, any explanation regarding a certain phenomena or event na nangyayari sa paligid ng isang tao is it correlates or they correlate it with the supernatural explanation. Like for example, pinarurusahan tayo ng Diyos kaya may ganitong sakuna, kaya nagkakaroon ng ganitong sakit. So, that is the reason why some Greek philosophers is they always seek for the truth. So, people who are skilled in rattling arguments by discussion and debate, they are the ones called as sophists. So yung mga sophists, they are the first teachers of the West. So since they are skilled in rattling different arguments, no, on different people, which means they are also skilled in different types of subject. Usually kasi yung mga sophists, since they are first teachers of the West, bihasa sila sa 1 to 2 or more pa na subjects. Like for example, kung mapapansin niyo yung mga Greek philosophers na madalas na ini-introduce sa history ng different subjects, kung mapapansin niyo yun, they always have these two subjects. Like for example, sa arts, si Aristotle, you're going to meet Aristotle in the arts, sa history ng arts. And then, pagdating naman sa ibang field ng social science like ethics, is mamimit niyo ulit siya or kasama ulit siya dun sa discussions. So, yun yung reason why sophists are skilled in rattling arguments, no? They know information in two or more subjects when it comes to their field. So next one, always remember that sila yung first teachers of the West. So I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. So that is what Socrates said. So let us dig in furthermore. Bakit kaya yun yung sinabi ni Socrates? So Socrates is one of the popular big three. O sino po yung sino yung tinatawag na big three in philosophy? Kung natatandaan.
Si Plato po.
Sige po. Sino pa? Si Plato, Aristotle, and si? Okay, very good. Silang tatlo. Si Socrates, si Plato, and si Aristotle. Okay, class, ito yung amazing thing sa kanila or amazing interconnection sa kanila that Socrates is a student of Plato. While Plato, baliktad pala. Okay, Plato is the student of Socrates, while Aristotle is the student of Plato. So, ganun sila nag-interconnect na tatlo. Kaya sila tinawag na Big Three. Kasi, they have this relationship of a teacher-student relationship. No? So, next one, dako ulit tayo kay Socrates. So, since he is one of the Big Three, he is the mentor of Plato. So, yun yung nasabi ko na din kanina. So as, meron siyang tinatawag na philosophy which is Socratic method. So let us dig in furthermore what Socratic method is. It is also known as the Socratic dialectic method, wherein it involves the search for the correct or proper definition of a thing. So like for example, um, we are in search for a definition or we are in search for a reason why does it rain. And so for the Socratic method, we're going to use the different methods. Like for example, it is the art of questioning. So always remember sa Socratic dialectic method, um, it's always that question, question, and question. Kasi, for them, the unexamined life is not worth living. So, kung hindi mo maranasan or matatry yung isang bagay is, yung buhay mo, hindi siya worth living. So, let us dig in further. Tingnan natin yung view of human nature ni Socrates para mas maintindihan natin kung ano yung Socratic dialectic method. So he believed that his mission in life was to seek the highest knowledge and convince others who were willing to seek this knowledge with him. So, syempre, as a teacher, hindi lang kailangan na ikaw lang yung seek for the knowledge. You have to seek for the knowledge or you have to get or you have to have some mentees, huh? Like, for example, is ipapasa mo yung knowledge mo about certain type of things sa isang tao. So, ganun yung ginagawa ni Socrates. He believed na he needs to seek the highest knowledge in the world or in you in the society. For us, kailangan dahil kailangan niya ng mag-seek ng knowledge na yon, he need other people para maipasa niya yung kanyang knowledge. And yung knowledge na yon is hindi siya mag-exchange dahil yung pinagpasahan niya ng knowledge na yun is ipapasa din to other people and ipapasa to other people, ipapasa to other people. So, yun. It allowed him to question people's belief and ideas. So, eto, ginamit niya ni Socrates yung Socratic method dito. Kasi, ang Socratic method is about the questioning of others or questioning a certain type of thing. So that's why it also allowed Socrates to question people's belief and ideas. Na it helped them to expose their misconception since art of questioning is about doubting again and again, no? So it exposes their misconception na wait lang, malalobat yung laptop ko. So it exposed their misconception pagdating sa mga bagay-bagay. So as syempre in art of questioning, you are also learning about dun sa bagay na yun. So next one is to get them in touch with the soul. So yun yung reason niya din. That's why he uses the Socratic dialectic method to get in touch with their soul or known as their true self. So touching of the soul, it may mean helping the other person to get in touch with his true self. So for Socrates, we can only get in touch with ourselves through um, questioning and doubting the different things around us. So that's why for him, yung touching of the soul is also helping us to get in touch with our true self, no? So next one, always remember the true self is not the body, but the soul, or yung pagkatao natin. It's not the physical body of the person. So, virtue is the inner goodness and real beauty is that of soul. So, always remember yung virtue, yun yung mga acts ng tao or act of a man na kaaya-aya sa paningin ng karamihan or tama siya in a morally standard way. So as for them or also for Socrates, yung tunay na beauty ng soul natin or yung tunay na kagandahan is nasa soul natin and yung kagandahang loob is that is part of the inner beauty of our soul. Ayan. So, his Socratic method forces people to use their innate reason by reaching inside themselves into their deepest nature. So, through art of questioning, it helps people ideas of other people, but also their own ideas, so as they question themselves, no, are one step ahead into reaching inside their deepest nature. So, ganun yung nangyayari. So as Plato naman, Plato, the real name of Plato is Aristocles. Always remember that ha, Aristocles. So bakit siya tinawag na Plato? It's because of his physical build. Kasi yung kanyang physical build daw, ay medyo malaki yung kanyang katawan. So that's why he is called as Plato, which means yung Plato is wide and broad or wide or broad. So, he established the school known as the Academy. So, mas prominent siya sa philosophy. So, as meron din to sa ethics. And Socrates and Plato believed that philosophy is more than the analysis but rather a way of life. So, as you remember, on my definition kanina, nung nag-start tayo ng ating discussion, um, si Plato, or I mean, um, yung philosophy, it is about the study of the experiences and the knowledge of a person, di ba? So, that's why for them, it is a way of life na in your everyday life, you use to explore knowledge. You use your experience to teach other people. So, yun yung naging kanilang reason why thus for them, it is a way of life. So for Plato, there's a metaphysics. Yung metaphysics na yun, it is a philosophical study on the causes and nature of things. So, like for example, bakit at paano nangyayari ang isang bagay? Like, paano nagkakaroon ng ulan? Bakit nagkakaroon ng ulan? 'Di ba? So, it is also known as the theory of forms. So, metaphysics is equals to theory of forms. Same lang po sila. So, let us dig in furthermore, bakit nga ba siya tinawag na theory of forms? The characteristic of Plato's forms. So, number one, forms are ageless and therefore eternal. So, hindi ito tumatanda katulad natin. And even though na mamatay na tayo, is nandito pa rin yung form ni Plato sa paligid or sa mundo. The forms are changing and are unchanging and therefore permanent. So since hindi tumatanda yung forms and even na at the long run is nandito pa rin siya or still nandito pa rin yung form kahit na wala na tayo. That's the reason why it is permanent. So as the forms are unmoving and indivisible. So, hindi rin 'to gumagalaw and minsan hindi rin 'to nakikita ng tao. So, paano natin matutukoy yung form na tinatawag ni Plato? So, Plato's theory of forms refers to what are real. So as they are not objects that are encountered with the senses but can only be grasped intellectually. So yung forms natin, it is also known as the knowledge or intellect ng isang people. So that's why even though na kahit na tayo ay mawalan sa mundo or kahit na um, dumaan pa yung iba't ibang generation, it is still there. It's because of our um, before tawag nito, before tayo mawala sa mundo. So next one is we have this dualism, Plato's dualism. So meron tayong tinatawag the realm of the shadow. So it is composed of changing sensible things that are lesser entities and therefore perfect, imperfect, and flawed. So always remember that the realm of the shadow is the physical realm. So that's the reason why yung physical realm natin is tinatawag siyang sensible. Kasi, lahat ng physical na makikita ninyo dyan sa paligid ninyo, they were always imperfect. Meron at meron dyan isang flaw or meron makikitang kamalian dyan. So, that's why it is the realm of the shadow. And that is the reason why it is changing. So, always remember, realm of the shadows is tinutukoy niya yung physical realm, yung mga touchable or tangible entities. So as the realm of forms is composed of eternal things which are permanent and perfect. So it is the source of reality and true knowledge. So always remember na yung realm of forms, it talks about the spiritual realm. So that's why it is always permanent and perfect. So for Plato kasi, spiritual realm is walang makakapantay doon. Since lahat ng knowledge and ng reality is naka-base doon sa spiritual realm. So always remember that the realm of forms is the spiritual realm and the realm of the shadow is the physical realm. So how does Plato view human nature? So he made use of the Socratic yan class, hindi yan Socrates. Socratic dialectic method and considered it an important tool in discovering the knowledge. Kasi, as I have mentioned earlier, no, Socratic dialectic method is the art of questioning. So, through questioning, we learn or we know different types of knowledges. So that's why, since si Plato, siya ay isang student or siya ay student ni Aristotle, he made use of his own human nature or Socrates' view of human nature, which is the Socratic dialectic method. Dahil for him also, or for Plato also, it is an important tool in discovering a knowledge, since questioning is also helping you to answer the different types of things which curiouses you. So, number one, he believed that knowledge lies within one's soul. So, unlike Socrates, we need to experience or we need to use the Socratic dialectic method in the society. Si Plato naman, he believed that knowing ourselves is also a knowledge or yung knowledge na we need in order for us to know about the different things around the world is nasa soul lang natin or within ourselves. So he considered human being as microcosm of the universal macrocosm. Anong ibig sabihin ito? Meaning to say na we are just part of a whole. human beings will always be part of a social system. So, part lang tayo ng isang malaking macrocosm. So, Plato's view of human nature, even if the materials of the human body and the physical world are imperfect, humans have the immortal, rational soul, which Plato believed is created in the image of the divine. So, even though na yung physical realm na kasama doon yung tao is imperfect or hindi tayo perfect as an individual and meron tayong different flaws, yung humans, even though sometimes na immoral tayo, nakakagawa tayo ng mali, and taliwas sa moral standards ng society natin, is naniniwala pa rin si Plato na kawangis natin yung nilikha or yung lumikha. So, for him, there is three types or three things that would describe soul, which is meron daw tatlong components yung soul natin. So, number one, we have the reason. So, the reason is the rational and is the motivation for the goodness and truth. While the spirited naman is the non-rational and is willed and the drive towards the action. This part of the soul is initially neutral but can be influenced or pulled into two directions. So, si appetites naman are irrational and lean towards the desire for the pleasure of the body. So, dito ko siya i-discuss para mas matandaan nyo. So, the tripartite soul. So, yung rational yan ay tinatawag na the reason. So, see the reason, a person is can only know or can only be rational through tawag nito, a person can only be rational through using his intellect. Ayan. So, next one naman is spirited naman. Siya yung ating emotion, which is part of also ng brain natin. So, class, medyo di-discuss ko lang tong yung image niya, bakit may puso doon, in science talaga is nagpapump lang siya ng blood. So, di ba, at some point, is yung puso, dinedescribe siya as sa emotions, no? But always remember, si the spirited is part pa rin siya ng brain since it also tackles about our feelings and emotions. Okay? So, si rational or si the reason and si the spirited is always be part of our intellectual. Pero magkaiba lang sila ng function. So, nasa isip pa rin natin si the spirited. Si appetites naman, it is the drives you to eat, have sex, and protect yourself. Okay? So, si appetite is, sabi ko nga dito kanina, wait lang, nagkamali ako na ano. And sabi ko nga kanina, it is the irrational and lean towards the desire for the pleasures of the body. So, kung mapapansin nyo yung mga examples dito, no, eating, nagiging drive siya ng body natin. And having sex or protecting ourselves, ganyan, is nagiging part din siya ng drives natin as a person. So, let us have an example about the tripartite soul. So, for the reason, no, like for example, you wanted to party tonight, pero hindi mo magawa because of the pandemic, no? So, paano magagana tong tatlo? Si the spirited, nakadepende siya sa kung ano yung actions na meron si reason and si appetites. So, for the reason, ang since na-realize mo, kapag, eto pala, kapag si reason yung namamayani sa utak ng tao or sa soul natin is gagawin natin kung ano yung tama. Whereas, kapag si appetites, gagawin natin kung ano yung desire ng ating sarili. Which is, the pleasures of our body or yung kasayahan natin. Ganun lang kasimple yun. Okay? Paano nagkakaroon ng si spirited? Siya yung motivation towards an action. Kung mahihila siya ni the reason, mas better. Kung mahihila siya ni appetites, medyo magkakaroon tayo ng problema doon. So, nakadepende lang kasi si the spirited dito sa dalawang to. Always remember, si reason, lagi siya dun sa good side. Whereas, si appetites is for the pleasures ng ating body. So, Plato's view of human nature. Plato believed that people are intrinsically good. Sometimes, however, judgments are made in ignorance, and Plato equates ignorance with evil. So, nagiging evil daw tayo or nagkakaroon lang ng problems or nag-arise yung different types of problems sa isang tao when it comes to ignorance. Lalo na kapag ignorant tayo, we didn't seek for the truth ng isang bagay. So, dahil sa ignorance, nagiging evil yung mga tao. So, yan. Plato's theory of love and becoming. So, si Plato kasi, maano din siya for love. So, Allegory of the Cave. So, what people in the cave see are the only shadows of the reality, which they believe are the real things and represent the knowledge. So, only forms are real. So, yun yung Plato na para sa kanya, yung kung ano yung kanyang nakita or kung ano yung kanyang nalaman regarding his knowledge is yun yung tama or yun yung katotohanan. So, wait lang class ha. Let me just use another tab.
What is reality? Knowledge? The meaning of life? Big topics you might tackle figuratively, explaining existence as a journey down across an ocean, a climb, a war, a book, a thread, a game, a window of opportunity, or an all too short-lived flicker of flame. 2,400 years ago, one of history's most famous thinkers said life is like being chained up in a cave, forced to watch shadows flitting across a stone wall. Pretty cheery, right? That's actually what Plato suggested in his Allegory of the Cave, found in Book 7 of the Republic, in which the Greek philosopher envisioned the ideal society by examining concepts like justice, truth, and beauty. In the allegory, a group of prisoners have been confined in a cavern since birth, with no knowledge of the outside world. They are chained facing a wall, unable to turn their heads, while a fire behind them gives off a faint light. Occasionally, people pass by the fire carrying figures of animals and other objects that cast shadows on the wall. The prisoners name and classify these illusions, believing they're perceiving actual entities. Suddenly, one prisoner is freed and brought outside for the first time. The sunlight hurts his eyes, and he finds the new environment disorienting. When told that the things around him are real, while the shadows were mere reflections, he cannot believe it. The shadows appeared much clearer to him, but gradually his eyes adjust until he can look at reflections in the water, at objects directly, and finally at the sun, whose light is the ultimate source of everything he has seen. The prisoner returns to the cave to share his discovery, but he is no longer used to the darkness and has a hard time seeing the shadows on the wall. The other prisoners think the journey has made him stupid and blind and violently resist any attempts to free them. Plato introduces this passage as an analogy of what it's like to be a philosopher trying to educate the public. Most people are not just comfortable in their ignorance, but hostile to anyone who points it out. In fact, the real-life Socrates was sentenced to death by the Athenian government for disrupting the social order, and his student Plato spends much of the Republic disparaging Athenian democracy, while promoting rule by philosopher kings. With the cave parable, Plato may be arguing that the masses are too stubborn and ignorant to govern themselves. But the allegory has captured imaginations for 2,400 years because it can be read in far more ways. Importantly, the allegory is connected to the theory of forms developed in Plato's other dialogues, which holds that, like the shadows on the wall, things in the physical world are flawed reflections of ideal forms, such as roundness or beauty. In this way, the cave leads to many fundamental questions, including the origin of knowledge, the problem of representation, and the nature of reality itself. For theologians, the ideal forms exist in the mind of a creator. For philosophers of language viewing the forms as linguistic concepts, the theory illustrates the problem of grouping concrete things under abstract terms. And others still wonder whether we can really know that the things outside the cave are any more real than the shadows. As we go about our lives, can we be confident in what we think we know? Perhaps one day a glimmer of light may punch a hole in your most basic assumptions. Will you break free to struggle towards the light, even if it costs you your friends and family? Or stick with comfortable and familiar illusions? Truth or habit? Light or shadow? Hard choices, but if it's any consolation, you're not alone. There are lots of us down here.
So, yan. For this lesson, ayan, yung Allegory of the Cave, he used it, or Plato used it, for, um, for us to further understand what the theory of forms is and how does it affects the knowledge of a person. No, how does we people use our knowledge to know the different types of truths around us and society. So yun yung naging representation ni um, Allegory of the Cave pagdating sa social science or pagdating sa understanding the self or philosophy. Paano nga ba nakakatulong or paano ba madedescribe ng different type of forms yung knowledge ng isang tao when it comes to his environment or society. So, next one, ay na naman gumalaw ng cursor. Ayan. So, ito yung mga forms na nakikita ng mga caveman from the light or from the fire on the shadow. So, ganyan. So, next one, Plato's Symposium. In Plato's Symposium, love is the way by which a person can move from the state of imperfect knowledge and ignorance to a state of perfection and true knowledge. So, in short, for Plato, nababago tayo ng pag-ibig. No? Kung before, hindi tayo kaaya-aya or negative yung tingin sa atin ng ibang tao, imperfect tayo, we are ignorant, but true love is we can achieve perfection and true knowledge. So love is the force that paves the way all the beings to ascend to higher stages of self-realization and perfection. Para mas maintindihan daw natin kung ano yung mga pangyayari sa ating buhay or sa ating paligid, no, we should also love. Ayan. Kasi through love, we are undergoing to a set of self-realizations throughout our life so as we also ascend into perfection. So love is the way of realizing and knowing the truth. So for Plato, it's not just the art of questioning for you to know the truth or to realize the truth. It is also love. No, through love, we people can realize and know the different truths. So the Christian philosophers, they are also theologians. Ayan. So we're done discussing the two Greek philosophers. So now we're going to discuss the two Christian philosophers, which is si Saint Thomas Aquinas and si Saint Augustine de Hippo. So the Christian philosophers, they are also theologians. Once we say theologians, they study the life of gods or the religious and religious beliefs or religion and religious beliefs. So yun yung pinaka-center nila, spirituality. And their concern was with God and man's God relationship with God. Or their concern was with God and man's relationship with God. So ang most concern nila is about how does God will relate to man and how man relate to God. So they did not believe that self-knowledge and happiness were the ultimate goals of the man, unlike dun sa mga philosophers ng Greek na they always seek for knowledge, seek for truth and happiness, like that. But Christian philosophers believe that man should rely to God's command. So lahat ng ating gagawin, lahat ng ating plans should be inclined into the God's command and His judgment of what constitute goods and evil. So yung center ng ating morality and sense of self is on the God's command. So nakaangkala yon dun sa God's will, according to Christian philosophers. So let us try to compare what are the differences between the Christian philosophers and the Greek philosophers. Simple lang naman. So Christian philosophers, they see man as sinner who reject and go against a loving God's command. So yung mga tao daw, medyo pasaway tayo because we are always a sinner. Because we reject kung ano yung goal sa atin ni God. Like Jonah, what Jonah and the whale, or yung story ng Jonah and the whale, no? So that would be an example of or representation that man is a sinner and man also reject or go against the command of God. So, whereas Christian philosopher, they value faith over reason and logic. For us naman, yung Greek philosophers, mas binavalue nila yung reason and logic over faith. And the Greek philosophers, no, for Greek philosophers, we are basically good. But through ignorance is we became evil or bad. You know? So, ulitin ko, sa mata ng mga Christian philosophers, makasalanan talaga tayo. But, for the Greek philosophers, we are good. Nagiging evil lang tayo because of the ignorance. Because we don't know about or we do not have a knowledge of a certain type of thing. So, Saint Augustine of Hippo, si Saint Augustine of Hippo, he rejected Christianity even though na siya ay isang theologian. So, he wanted to know about moral evil and why it existed in people. So his personal desire for sensual pleasure and the questions about all the sufferings in the world. So but that's why he rejected Christianity because he really wanted to know why moral evil existed even if there is God, and why does personal desire and sensual pleasure is still present in the person's life. So as why is still there suffering in the world na meron namang Diyos? Yun yung gusto niyang malaman. So, Saint Augustine's view of human nature, always remember that mayroon dalawa. Number one is God as the source of all reality and truth. So, we may know the truth because of God. So, number two, the sinfulness of a man. So, let us define them too. So, God as the source of all reality and truth. So, number one, man is capable of knowing eternal truths. So, lahat tayo is merong karapatan para malaman yung katotohanan. Pero yung katotohanan na yon is malalaman lang natin if we know and understand God. Okay? Because for St. Augustine of Hippo, God is the source of all reality and truth. So, his relationship with God means that those who know most about God will come closest to understanding the true nature of the world. So, ibig sabihin, if you know God, you're one step ahead in knowing or understanding what is the real nature of the world. So, how does the world works? So, sinfulness of a man naman, cause of the sin or evil is the act of man's free will. So, the reason why man is a sinner is because of his free will. So, moral goodness can only be achieved through God's grace. If we seek God's grace, we will know also the moral goodness. So, yan. Always remember na nagiging makasalanan tayo on a perspective of a Christian philosopher because of our free will. So, role of love. So, si St. Augustine, katulad ni Plato, um, meron din siyang love or meron din siyang concept of love in his philosophy like Plato. So, St. Augustine is in agreement with the Greeks that man searches for happiness. Ayan. So, we search for our own happiness like the Greeks. He believed, no? And he stated that real happiness can only be found in God. So, yun. Unlike Greek na we can found our own happiness through seeking for the truth or knowing the different facts or tawag nito, through our experiences. But for Saint Augustine is we can only know what real happiness is if we know God. And so for God is love and He created humans for us also to love. And so problems arises because of the object human chooses to love. So for Saint Augustine is mahal tayo ng Diyos. But yung pagmamahal na yun, we have to transfer it through us. Or we have to transfer it dun sa kapwa natin. Pero, kapag sobra-sobra yung pagmamahal na binibigay natin, according to St. Augustine, is there would be problems. Like for example, there is the thing called disordered love. Disordered love is results when a man loves the wrong things which he believes will give him happiness. So ito yung mga bagay na naniniwala tayo, nabibigyan tayo ng happiness nito. Like for example, is yung money. Naniniwala tayo na once we have so many money is makakamit natin yung totoong happiness natin. But there are certain type of love na or certain things na pwedeng mag-arise. Like for example, yung disordered love nga. One of the example also of disordered love is the sin of greed. Ayan, we too much love physical objects like yung money, no? 'Di ba kaya nga nagkakaroon ng corruption is because of the money or because of the greed kasi we want more or yung mga tao na nangungurakot mas gusto nila ng mas madami pa. So that's why nagiging greedy sila. Lalo-lalo na for money. So for other people is not lasting or love for other people is not lasting and excessive love for them is the sin of jealousy. So so ito na yung rason kung bakit maraming tao or may mga tao na sobra-sobra kung magselos. It is because excessive yung love nila para dun sa tao na yon. Wherein they cannot know or they did not know na hindi na pala nila, without knowing na hindi na nila napapansin yung pagmamahal nila para sa sarili nila. But also, yung sobra namang pagmamahal sa sarili will lead to sin of pride. Kasi nga, sobrang mahal mo na yung sarili mo, hindi mo na kayang magbigay ng pagmamahal pa sa ibang tao. So, for God, love for God is the supreme virtue and only through loving God can man find real happiness. So for us to find the real happiness, so we can or we have to search for God. Or we have to know God. So to eliminate yung tatlong love na to or love for yung sin of greed, love for other people which leads to sin of jealousy,
or love for the self, which leads to sin of pride, no? May eliminate lang natin yun, and we can only find our true happiness through God. So, Thomas Aquinas, si Thomas Aquinas, meron lang siyang dalawang parts sa kanyang philosophy. So, number one, pakilala ko pala muna siya. He is the most eminent 13th century scholar and stalwart of the medieval philosophy. So he is also a theologian in which yung kanyang mga ideas in his philosophy is adopted from the ideas of Aristotle. So he has two philosophy lang, which is the matter and form. So matter, common stuff that makes up everything in the universe. Kung ano yung nakikita ninyo dyan sa paligid ninyo, kung ano yung nakatouch ng inyong senses, that is um, the matter. Whereas yung form, it is the essence of a substance of a thing. So meaning to say, ano ba yung components ng matters na nakikita ninyo or yung mga bagay na nakikita ninyo sa paligid. So ano ba yung mga components niyan? Ano yung binubuo niyan? So as, ano ba yung pinaka-reason bakit nabuo yung isang bagay or bakit nabuo yung bagay na yan? Ano yung pinaka-purpose niya? Like for example, yung table. Kung may table man sa paligid mo, ano ba yung purpose ng table? Ano yung essence niyan? Bakit nagawa yan? So, yun yung form mismo. Yung reason kung bakit nagawa or bakit nag-exist yung bagay na yan. Whereas yung matter is literally kung ano yung nakikita natin dyan sa ating paligid. And by the way, hail is the Greek term, hail pala is the Greek term for matter, whereas morphe naman is the Greek term for form. Before I proceed in discussing what or who Rene Descartes is, I know that you're familiar with him. Sino po si Rene Descartes? I need your ideas.
Cartesian plane.
Okay, very good. That is the Cartesian plane. So, siya yung gumawa na or siya yung nag-conceptualize na Cartesian plane. Diba? Or he is not just a mathematician, but Rene Descartes is also a philosopher or philosopher rather. So, aside from Cartesian plane, he is also known as the father of modern philosophy. No? And he coined or he produced the thing or he produced what is known as the Cartesian method. So, ito na nga po yung Cartesian plane na tinatawag natin. And invented analytic geometry. So, siya yung proponent for analytic geometry. So, as in his system, the Descartes system, ang ginamit niya or pinaka naging guide niya to conceptualize this system is his dream. So, yun yung nagsilbing guide sa kanyang Descartes system. And for him, yung principles on that systems were true and related to each other in a clear and meaningful way. So, interconnected lahat-lahat daw ng ideas according to Rene Descartes. And through mathematics, he discovered that the human mind has two powers. So, there are two powers of the mind according to Rene Descartes, which is the intuition and the deduction. So, for intuition, it is the ability to apprehend the direction of a certain truth. Whereas the deduction, it is the power to discover what is not known by progressing in an orderly way from what is already known. Like for example, bumili ka ng Android phone. Yung Android phone, first time niya lang lumabas sa market. So, hindi mo pa alam kung paano i-navigate or gagamitin si Android phone. So, using your deduction, ginamit mo si manual. Or when you're using deduction, is you use the manual para malaman mo kung ano yung features, para saan yung different icons na meron doon sa Android phone. Whereas in intuition, ito naman yung part wherein we uses our common sense, no? Like, for example, bumili ka ulit ng Android phone and you know now to how to navigate the um, Android phone. So, using your intuition, ginamit mo lang yung mga bagay na nalalaman mo during your previous time nung bumili ka ng Android phone. So, next one is in Rene Descartes' view of human nature, he has this quote, I think therefore I am, which is he believe is to think is to doubt is to think. So, once daw na nagda-doubt ang isang tao or nagdududa tayo, is it forms a door for us to think of the ways, no? And also, he deduced that the thinker is the thing that Dobbs understands, affirms, denies, wills, confuses, and that also imagines and feels. So, for Rene Descartes, yung tinatawag nating thinking or yung thinker, which is tayo, no? We have this characteristics na it's okay to doubt because to doubt is to think, and through doubting, we build passes for us to understand the different things. It also helps us to affirm or create a words of affirmation towards other people. No, it also gives us the point na i-deny natin yung certain information. Also, will, no, yung nagmo-motivate sa atin para gumawa ng isang bagay. So, as yung refusal, how do we refuses different things and also imagines and feels. So, next one, he has this mind-body problem. So, yung mind-body problem, he considered the soul or mind, also known as the self, as the substance that is separated from the body. So, for him, yung soul or mind daw ng isang tao is magkaiba siya sa body because yung mind natin or yung body natin is a parang robot or parang machine that lahat ng bodily process natin is mechanical. Whereas yung body natin is nag-act as a machine and yung will naman natin is ginagamitan ng mind. Like for example, sa isang machine, di ba? Sa isang machine, meron tayong tinatawag na controller. Yung controller, yun yung mind natin. And yung gumagawa ng mismong processes is yung ating body. So, ganun yung partner mind-body problem. So, as naniniwala si Rene Descartes na kapag wala yung mind, hindi na magpa-function yung ating body na maayos. So, John Locke. Si John Locke naman, he is interested on the workings of the mind, particularly the acquisition of knowledge. Na, like for example, he believed that the result from ideas produced by a posteriori or by the objects that were experienced are not in experience. Ideas are not innate, but rather the mind at birth is a blank slate. So, sa kanya, yung term na tabula rasa. So, kay John Locke yung tabula rasa. So, what is tabula rasa? Tabula rasa is a blank slate. Meaning to say, for John Locke, yung mind daw ng isang tao at birth ay isang blankong papel or blanko siya. Wala talaga. So, paano nagkakalaman yung mind natin? Or paano nalalamanan yung ating utak? Or ating pag-iisip rather. For John Locke, as we grow older, as we progress, habang tumatanda tayo, is nagkakaroon tayo ng different experiences. So, yung different experiences na nakukuha natin throughout our life, yun yung pumupuno sa tabula rasa. So, that's why, para sa kanya, nung birth pa lang, wala pa tayong kaalam-alam. And nagkakaroon lang ng laman or nagkakaroon lang ng informations yung ating mind because of our experiences. Yan. Nothing exists in the mind that was not first in the senses. So, gumagamit din siya ng senses. So, John Locke view human nature as morals, religious, and political values must come first from the senses of experience. So, we must first experience the different types of values or um, morals that we have for us to recommend to other people, no? And moral good depends on the conformity or non-conformity of a person's behavior towards some law. So, yung kabutihang loob daw ng tao is nakaangkla lang siya sa kung paano makisama yung isang tao sa isang law or paano sumunod yung isang tao sa law. So as meron siyang tinatawag na three types of law or three laws. First law is the law of opinion. So yung law of opinion, where actions are praiseworthy, called virtues, and those are not are called vice. So, law of opinion, ito yung nakaangkla sa moral standards natin. So, wherein, kapag yung isang bagay na ginawa mo, nag-result sa maganda, yun ay tinatawag na virtue. Kapag hindi naman, yun ay tinatawag na vice or negative yung nangyari. Like for example, tumulong ka sa matanda na nahihirapan makatawid sa kalsada. That is virtue. Whereas, kapag hindi mo siya tinulungan or hindi you decided na wag mo siyang tulungan, hayaan siyang mahirapan sa pagtawid sa kalsada, that is vice. Okay? Next one naman is the civil law, where right actions are enforced by the people and authority. So, yung mga people and authority, sila yung gumagawa nitong civil law. Like, for example, the 1987 Philippine Constitution. So, yun yung isa sa tinatawag na civil law according to John Locke. Since tao yung nag-i-impose noong 1987 Constitution. And yung tao rin yung gumawa nun. So, as yung ordinances na meron tayo sa mga barangays natin, yun din ay isang civil law for John Locke. So, divine law naman is set by God on the actions of a man. Meaning to say, yung man is, or yung pinaka-best example for divine law is the Ten Commandments for the Catholics and Christians. So, as for the Muslims naman, lahat ng readings and writings ni Allah na nandoon po sa ating Quran. So, yun yung divine law na tinatawag. So, ulitin ko, there are three laws according to John Locke. Number one is law of opinion. Number two is civil law. And number three is divine law. Always remember that. And yung theory naman ni John Locke or philosophy ni John Locke is about tabula rasa or our mind is being a blank slate at first. Next naman, meron akong, here is David Hume. So David Hume, he relied on the scientific method, believing that it could analyze human nature and explain the workings of the mind. So kung yung mga nauuna na na-discuss ko is about the experiences of other people or their own experiences, si David Hume naman, gumamit siya ng scientific method to test if yung human nature and yung workings of the mind is can work hand in hand or interconnected silang dalawa. So he discovered the limitations of the mind and his optimism turned into skepticism. Kasi nung na-realize niya na yung mind daw pala ng isang tao or yung mind natin ay meron limitation. Yung optimism niya to do the job is biglang nagbago. So that's why he feels skeptic. Parang hindi siya makapaniwala na may limitation yung mind ng isang tao. So for David, yung on the human mind, the mind receives the materials from the senses and call it perception. So whereas there are two types of perception according to him. So number one, it is the impression. So impression are the immediate sensation of the extreme reality. So madalas si impression na makikita or mararanasan natin kapag meron tayong mga online bilihin. Diba sa mga Shopee or sa Lazada or sa mga online shopping na applications is makikita ninyo yung mga pictures doon ng mga pictures ng mga products no, na sobrang gaganda, sobrang ayos, ganyan. When or in reality, minsan pagdating sa atin, is hindi talaga siya totally nung nasa picture, hindi siya as is no, nung nasa picture. So, ideas naman are the recollection of this impression. So, once na you recollected na, hindi nga pala ito yung nasa picture nung binili kong item. Bakit ganun magkaiba yun? Yun na yung ideas. Doon form yung different ideas natin. So, next one is, for David Hume, soul is equal to self, like other philosophers. But he concluded that the man does really have an idea of so-called self because of ideas rely on the sense of impressions and people have no sense of impressions of the self. So, meron naman talaga tayong tinatawag na self. Pero, yung ideas natin about our impressions of the self natin, impressions natin mismo sa sarili, is hindi natin siya napapansin madalas. And dahil doon, we have no sense of impression of the self. Kaya hindi tayo nagkakaroon ng impression sa sarili natin is because we are not well aware of ourselves. And the self is also a product of the imagination. So for him, yung sarili natin is the product of our imagination. How we imagine things is yun lang yung nag-work, or that is how our self works. So for David Hume, there is no such thing as personal identity. So behind perceptions and feelings that come and go, and there is no permanent or unchanging self. So for David Hume, change is only permanent. 'Di ba? Um, as we grow old, no, in the physical aspect ng sarili natin, you can see na tumataas yung height natin, nag-iiba yung body build natin, and nag-iiba yung way of thinking din natin, 'di ba? So, kaya for David Hume, there is no such personal identity. Kasi nagbabago tayo, not just physically, but also emotionally, mentally, so as physiologically. So, para sa kanya, wala tayong personal talagang identity. Dahil nga, nagbabago tayo from time to time. And it also depends on the environment na ginagalawan natin. So, next one naman, si Immanuel Kant. Si Immanuel Kant, he studies on the Asian philosophies, which had a strong influence on him, but it was the French philosopher Rousseau that made him realize and enable him to formulate ideas. So, nung unang part nung unang parte na studies ni Immanuel Kant is mas gusto niya or mas interested siya into Asian philosophies. Like, for example, yung kay Lao Tzu, yung Taoism, or yung Confucianism naman kay Confucius. But, nung nakilala niya yung French philosopher na si Rousseau, is doon na siya nag-start mag-formulate ng his own ideas according to the Western thought. No? And his view of the mind is he argued that the mind is not just a passive receiver of the sense of experience, but rather actively participates in knowing the object it experiences. So, hindi lang tayo yung observer ng experiences natin or experiences ng ibang tao. Pero tayo mismo yung gumaganap or gumagawa ng sense of experience natin according to Immanuel Kant. And instead of the mind conforming to the world, it is the external world that conforms to the mind. So yung ideas daw ng ideas sa mundo is ang nakikisama doon is yung mismong society natin, hindi daw tayo. Or hindi daw yung mind ng isang tao. So according to him, when the self sees an object, it tends to remember its characteristics and applies it on the forms of time. So, doon nabubuo si transcendental apperception. Kasi, nalalaman natin yung characteristics ng isang bagay. Like, for example, yung characteristics ng kaibigan natin na nung una natin silang nakilala, ano ba yung itsura ng mga kaibigan natin nung una natin silang nakilala? Sila ba ay walang makeup? Gulo-gulo ba yung buhok nila? Maayos ba yung kanilang suot? So, yun yung ideas natin. Whereas, sa transcendental apperception, according to Immanuel Kant, kailangan daw mag-exist ng sarili natin for us to have a memory or knowledge. Pero kapag hindi yun nag-exist, wala tayong memory or hindi, and at the same time, hindi rin tayo magkakaroon ng knowledge. So, experience of the self and its unity with objects. So, through transcendental of a perception, we experience the self. Literally. Ito na yung application na we are part of a whole, or we are the one who is acting on our own experiences. And through transcendental apperception, no, we also know how are we going to reunite or unite with objects. So next one naman, Kant's view of the human nature and the self. So in the matter of God, Kant stated that the kingdom of God is within the man. So God is manifested in people's lives, therefore it is the man's duty to move towards perfection. So for Immanuel Kant, God also existed. And he stated na yung mismong templo ng Panginoon is nasa sa atin. So that's why yung mga tao is we should go into God's grace also. Katulad ng philosophy din ni Saint Augustine. So, yan. He is Sigmund Freud, ha, class. Freud yung tamang basa dun sa apelido ni Sigmund. Freud yon, hindi yon Freud. It's Freud. So, he is the proponent of the psychoanalytic theory. I don't know if natatandaan niyo pa to or na-discuss niyo to sa personal development, but siya yung merong mga oral, phallic, latency, genital, anal, stages. Yun. And siya din yung may author ng id, ego, and superego. So, determine human behavior paved the way for science into looking into workings of the unconscious mind. So, ayan. He determined human behavior na through science, he looked into the workings of the unconscious mind. So, yung mga deeper thoughts ng mga tao, yun yung kanyang pinaka-focus. Kasi yung sa unconscious mind daw, yun daw yung part ng utak ng tao or yung mind ng tao na hindi na masyadong napag-aaralan or hindi masyadong napapansin ng ilan. Hindi kasi observable yung different types of processes na nangyayari sa unconscious mind ng isang tao. So next one, we have the structures of the mind. So sa structures of the mind, we have this id, ego, and superego. So si id, siya yung pressure principle. Si ego, si reality principle. And si superego naman is primarily dependent on learning what is right and wrong. So ganito lang yan. Si pressure principle, si id, ang kanyang goal is the pleasure of our body. So like for example, eating, sex, and other drives, no? So without realizing if yung certain action ng isang tao is good or bad. Whereas si ego naman, siya yung nagbibigay sa atin ng realidad na, oy, teka lang, tama ba itong ginagawa ko? Or pinopoint out lang lagi ni ego is the moral, or pinopromote ni ego is the truth. Whereas si super ego naman, siya yung tagapag-balance ni super ego, ni ego and ni id na tama ba yung decision ni ego or tama ba yung decision ni id. So siya yung balance dun sa dalawa, si super ego. So, we have levels of mental life according to Sigmund Freud. So, we have the unconscious and the conscious. So, yung unconscious, it contains all the drives or urges or instincts that are beyond our awareness, but that nevertheless motivates most of our words, feelings, and actions. So, hindi masyado kasing na-observe yung lahat ng unobservable behaviors natin is nasa unconscious mind natin. Like for example, is yung pagtibok ng puso or yung paghinga natin, nasa unconscious mind natin yan. So as yung thoughts na hindi pa natin nasasabi into words or hindi pa napaprocess into words. So, nasa unconscious mind din natin. Whereas, yung conscious mind natin is the mental elements and awareness at any given point of time. So, if we are all aware kung ano yung nangyayari or ano yung sasabihin natin, naisip na natin kung ano yung sasabihin natin, ang nag-work doon sa mind natin is the conscious. Kasi alam natin kung ano yung ginagawa natin. Alam natin yung process na nangyayari. So let's talk about naman Gilbert Ryle. So si Gilbert Ryle naman, he is an English philosopher whose ideas contradicted Cartesian dualism. So tinulugsa niya yung um, philosophy ni Rene Descartes. So he argued that dualism involves category mistakes and is a philosophical nonsense. So wala daw kwenta yung dualism. So para sa kanya, free will was invented to answer the questions of whether an action deserves a praise or a blame. So for Gilbert Ryle, sa free will ng isang tao, dun nakadepende kung yung course of his action would serve as a praise or a blame. Depende sa magiging result nun. So like for example is, nagpasa ka on time. So what would be the consequences of your action? It's either ba mabe-blame ka ng mga kaklase mo na bida-bida ka or mape-praise ka ng mga teachers mo. It's just a negative or a positive positive feedback. So free will depends kung kaaya-aya ba yung iyong ginawa. Or free will is depending kung ano ba yung product mo. So next one, he agreed that to Kant, who is stated that free will involves moral responsibility, which further assumed that man's action must be moral for it to be free. So, kay Gilbert Ryle, exercising free will means responsibility. So, hindi porket meron kang will or drive to do this type of thing, is gagawin mo na siya. At syempre, you have to keep in mind na kailangan mo pa rin maging responsibility towards your actions. And so that, kapag na-realize mo na meron yung responsibility mo na yon is okay siya, so dun mo lang mas ma-realize or mas maiintindihan na yung actions mo towards different things is free. Or dun mo lang mas ma-exercise si free will. So next one naman, we have Patricia and Paul Churchland. So we have the neurophilosophy. So this is the modern scientific inquiry which looks into the application of neurology to age-old problems in philosophy. One of which is the mind-body problem. So nabuo si neurophilosophy because of the mind-body problem. And neurophilosophy class is the combination of neurology and philosophy. Whereas neurology is testing the different philosophy or um tama the different ideas from philosophy is testing through the concepts in neurology, kaya naging neurophilosophy. So si Patricia and Porch Churchland, they are a married couple, and si Patricia po, siya ay isang neurologist, whereas si Paul, siya ay isang philosopher. So even if the neuroscience found that there is no causal relationship between the brain and the mind would still be associated with the brain. So yan, kahit na on the neuroscientific basis, na yung mind daw natin is wala siyang relationship to the brain, yung mind natin has also still associated with the brain. So man's brain is responsible for the identity known as the self. So according to Patricia Churchland. So yan. Lahat ng actions natin, lahat ng bagay on how we present ourselves is nasa self natin or nasa brain natin. So next one, the philosophy of wait lang, tama. Um, the philosophy of neuroscience is the study of philosophy of the mind, the philosophy of the science, and neuroscience and psychology. So, yan yung apat na combination. So, it aims to explore the relevance of neuroscientific experiment studies to the philosophy of the mind. So, kaya ako nasabi kanina na kaya nabuo ang neurophilosophy is because itong mag-asawa na to, they wanted to test the different scientific method into the philosophy of the mind. So even if the neuroscience found that there is no causal relationship, ayan, nasabi ko na siya kanina. So biochemical substances of the brain, according to to this philosophy of neuroscience, is really responsible for human thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Are you familiar with dopamine? Have you ever heard the term dopamine?
Opo.
Ano po ang nabibigay ni dopamine?
Ano yung para po dun sa parang happiness dun sa blood and something.
Okay, very good. Yes, happiness or kasayahan sa atin. Yung mga biochemicals like dopamine, if you're familiar, serotonin, oxytocin, so yan yung mga bagay na nagbibigay or for them, it is the neurochemicals or biochemical substances na responsible sa thoughts, feelings, and behaviors natin. Na, 'di ba? So pag dopamine, marami kang dopamine sa utak. It means happy ka. O nagre-release yung ating brain ng happy hormones. So yun. And yun yung pinaka na-discover nila using neurophilosophy. So meron, ito na yung last philosopher. So he is Maurice Merleau-Ponty. He is a French phenomenological philosopher whose thoughts were greatly influenced by Edmond Husserl and Martin Heidegger. So, yan dalawang yan. So, sa Merleau-Ponty, yung kanyang human nature or kanyang views about human nature and the self is yung for us to develop the concept of the body, subject, and contented that perception occur existentially. So para sa kanya, yung perceptions about natin sa bagay-bagay is um, existent, existing na. So naghihintay lang na ma-discover ng brain natin or ng mind natin yung mga perceptions sa paligid. So according to him, the world and the sense of the self are emergent phenomena on the ongoing process of the man's becoming. So yung different senses or yung sense of the self natin on at saka yung society, they are interconnected and those two are working for us on the process of the man's becoming or nag-interconnect yung dalawa for us to know better ourselves. So next one, phenomenology provides a direct description of the human experience, while perception forms the background of experience, which serves as to guide man's consciousness assigned to meaning to the world. So meaning to say, yung human experiences is yun yung napoprovide ng phenomenology. Whereas yung perception naman, yun yung nagiging background of experience natin or yung doon natin nakukuha or doon natin mula doon sa experiences natin from the past, doon tayo kumukuha ng lakas at doon natin na i-experience yung ating doon natin nakukuha yung philosophy of experiences natin. And doon din natin na-realize kung ano ba yung meaning natin or ano yung purpose natin as a person. So, for him, he stated that perception is not purely the result of sensation, nor it is purely interpretation. Rather, consciousness is the process that includes sensing as well as interpreting and reasoning. So, hindi lang kailangan magpe-perceive tayo ng different type of things. But we should look into our consciousness to process yung different perceptions na yon at ma-interpret ng mas maayos or ma-sense natin ng mas maayos to help it reason out ng mas maiintindihan ng ibang tao. And he was known as the philosopher of the body. Always remember that, ha? Ang philosopher of the body is si Merleau-Ponty. So that would be the end of my presentation.